Are you buying? Yes. Is that Grey Goose?
I guess we're live. All right, we'll get this started. This is Stealing Guests the VMware way. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Sweet. I tend to mumble, so I'm trying not to.
All right, so Justin had what I thought was a pretty good idea.
I have a bit of ADD when I'm at conferences, so.
So anyways, we wanted to make this presentation a little bit more interactive. And so if you look up at the top of the presentation, you'll see SSID firm and the URL. So basically, during this presentation, we're going to be releasing a tool, and the tool is going to exploit the vulnerability that we're going to talk about. And so if you want to play with the tool before we actually talk about it, you can just go to that URL and download it from there. Of course, you have to connect to the firm wireless network, assuming that no one has taken it down yet.
So yeah, there's instructions on the contest on the web server, and they're giving away a 500 gigabyte portable, what is it, USB drive, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Disclaimer.
Well, all right, so the first thing is the disclaimer. So everything that we say, everything that we show, everything that we imply, it's not the opinion of our employers, our dogs, our friends, our neighbors, VMware, ShmooCon, so on and so forth. These are our ideas. And of course, shockingly, the verbiage that's up there was not approved by our lawyers.
That's actually a lie, because I don't have a lawyer, so. All right, so about us, I'm Justin Morehouse. I'm the assessment lead at a large retailer in the southeast US. I actually have a phone call from my mother coming in right now. That's fantastic. I'm not lying, I swear to God. She just took my timer off my phone. That's fantastic. So yeah, I control 58.2% of the MacBook Pro flipping market on Craigslist. This is no lie. I have bought and sold a MacBook Pro today already, and this one is for sale too. So. Find me afterwards.
All right, so I'm Tony Flick. I'm a principal with Firm Associates. My personal belief is that there's nothing better than ketchup. It is the greatest thing ever created.
So real quick, a warning about this presentation, specifically what this presentation is not. This is not a zero-day release. I am really sorry if you thought it was. There's a CVE for this vulnerability, so usually when there's a CVE, it's not a zero-day. Sorry. What this presentation also is not is a demonstration of rocket science. This will become very, very apparent in a couple of slides how stupidly simple this is. But we just thought it was still pretty cool.
So what this presentation actually is, it's a reminder of the fact that virtualization technologies are not perfect. They do have security holes in them. I've been into numerous organizations who swear by the fact that there are no vulnerabilities in virtualization tools, and the matter of the fact is they're not perfect, there are holes in them.
I now have a voicemail from my mother. That's great. All right, so timeline, the most boring slide here. You can just read that, I won't go through it. Some of you may or may not have a problem with the fact that VMware responded on May 21st and they issued a patch on October 27th. But you can talk to me about that. Oh, and another thing, in the VM essay, the advisory put out by VMware, we were the B team for directory traversal. We didn't get the A squad there. So if you don't know what the vulnerability is, that's what it is. Ta-da, a fantastically technical directory traversal vulnerability. But it's cooler than that. At least we like to think it is. So moving on to the identification phase. So how did I identify this vulnerability? I use a super technical way. That I won't go into. It's actually a really embarrassing story because it makes me look like an idiot, actually, how I discovered it. Have a couple beers in me, and I'll let you know how I found that. But I identified it on VMware Server 201 build 156745 on my favorite OS, 12804. So when I originally found the vulnerability, I thought it was localized to the inside of the NAT interface on the host. So for those of you who are familiar with VMware networking and host and NAT mode, so your gateway when you are a NATed host is actually the loopback interface on the host. I'll say that again. When you're in NAT mode and you're a guest, your gateway is the loopback interface of the host. So what did that mean? Because of the directory traversal vulnerability, it meant that I could steal VMs from within other VMs. I mean, I could steal stuff off the host too, but that was like the cool factor. And then I was like, well, wait, that's if you're in natted mode. I was like, that's kind of cool, but not really practical. And that's actually what I submitted to VMware and submitted to ShmooCon.
But anyone ever see this this webpage? Just a show of hands.
They actually rose their hands.
All right, I was about to call you all a bunch of liars, but you kind of took that away from me. So for those of you who didn't know what that was, it was the VMware Server's web interface. How about this one? Oh, yeah. Not as many people? All right, you guys are a bunch of liars now. So well, this is the ESX.
This is the one that costs money, though.
This is the one that costs money.
I had one at ESXi before. Maybe I should have left that, but.
Google.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Not that I would ever do this or condone doing it, but if you were to select some key phrases and put them in quotes in Google, like if you need to access this host remotely, you may or may not find people who have this accessible via the internet. So what exactly is the vulnerability? How does it work? So what we're trying to accomplish by showing those two slides were that throw the whole NAT thing out. The web servers that are running that you use to log in to the web access, those are vulnerable too. So we don't need to worry about the NAT thing. So this makes this a little bit cooler in that it's remotely exploitable as long as you have access to the console management network. I'll get into the mitigation stuff later, but unfortunately in my previous consulting life, I saw a lot of organizations that actually didn't segment that console management network. So yeah, that's the timer's gone. So it's my mom. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Morehouse.
So in writing the tool, and you can see here looking at server and ESX and ESXi, server you need the technical .. to execute the directory traversal, and in ESX and ESXi you need the super technical %2e, 6 times for both of them to get to the root of the host system. To exploit the vulnerability, it's not as straightforward as originally thought, but it's still really trivial to exploit because it's good to be root. The web servers on both server and ESX and ESXi are running as root. You can see the arrows there, they're pointing. So the top one's ESX, HTTPS is running as root, HTTP is running as root, and then 8333 and 8222 on server, which are the default ports, they're running as root as well. So that means that we can pull anything we want off the vulnerable hosts. So in testing GuestStealer, which we'll talk about in a second, I was pulling down VMX files and I was learning about where the paths were for the guests. And then I went to pull down the VMDK image file and it didn't work. And I had one of those moments where I was like, I'm screwed. Because I thought I had something that was kind of cool and now I don't. But what actually ends up happening, particularly on server, or I should say only on server, is that there's a proxy that actually catches your requests. So if you put IP/UI, it redirects you to a service that's running on 8308, and that's vulnerable. And if you do a /SDK, it redirects you to a service that's running on 8307. If you remember before, I found the vulnerability on 8307 on the NAT interface. So 8308, that's the one with the /UI, the one you're going to get when you just simply log in or when you see the login screen. That's vulnerable, but what I found out is that it only returns certain file types, as I mentioned before, so I couldn't use that. But in reading that proxy XML file, I saw that all I had to do was append SDK to the end of my URL, and it brought me to 8307, which meant good to go. I could steal the VMDK file. For ESX and ESXi, it doesn't matter because they don't do that proxy redirect. All web servers or services, I hated using that term, but they're all vulnerable and they return all file types, so you don't need that SDK / on the end of your URL request.
All right, so I don't want to read off this slide, but basically if you've got a version of these softwares that are in your environment, that's one of these versions, you have a vulnerable box.
So that brings us to GuestStealer here. That can't be right. My clock says 6:34. Wow, we've only been talking for 4 minutes. So that brings us to GuestStealer. So what is GuestStealer? It's a Perl script that remotely steals virtual machines from vulnerable hosts. We built in support for server, ESX, and ESXi. and it basically allows you to select which guest you want to steal. I talked before, it's good to be root. It's also good to know where the default configuration files are in boxes because you can just get them and parse them.
Ta-da! So basically, this is the configuration file. It's a nicely formatted XML file. I don't know if you guys can actually read that, but next to the red arrows, you'll see an element called VMX config path. And basically, that tells you the exact path to the VMX file, as well as to the other files. And basically, this gives us the guest inventory, as well as the location information. All right, so when you open up that VMX file that the previous file gave you the location for, you'll notice that the VMX file will give you the location of the VMDK. And then on top of that, the VMDK will also point to other VMDKs. So for example, when you went through and set up your guest, you may have chosen to do it in a sparse method. So instead of having one large, say, 20 gigabyte VMDK, you wanted to split it up into, say, 10 2-gig files. This will give you the locations for them.
For those of you who don't know, VMDK is like the virtual hard disk of the virtual machine. So we're at live demo time. So here goes nothing, right? No, it should work. All right, so what I'm going to do first, and this is going to be weird because I'm holding a microphone at the same time, is I'm going to log into this box I have here next to me via crossover cable. I'm going to log into that and show you that I actually have a VM running. Did it go to sleep on me? That's fantastic.
I want the drive.
There he goes. There he goes.
Can you stand up so that we can see you? All right, come see me afterward to get the drive.
All right, well, this is fantastic. I probably tried this demo like 300 times, and it worked. I guess I can do one more thing here, Tony, if you hold my microphone for me, since we've gone pretty quick.
All right, so while he's doing that, some of the future enhancements that we have planned for this tool is, right now the way that it works is you provide it with an IP address as well as a bunch of other configurations such as like the port number, and it attacks that one system. Basically, it'll grab that inventory and it'll tell you which guests you can steal. But in the future, what I would like to do is expand it into a type of scanner so that you can run this across an entire network. And so instead of listing just the guests on that one machine that you pointed out, it can list the different guests on every vulnerable system on your environment. Question?
Yeah, have you written it as an Nagios plugin so you can see not only what was there, but the virtuals that it finds?
Sorry, I apologize.
Could you write it as a Nagios plugin, or Nessus plugin, or something like that, so you can not only find VMs that are vulnerable, but also the virtuals that it sees?
So the question was, can we write this as a Nessus plugin? And
Or Nmap, that's even better, yeah.
or Nmap, and that's a definite possibility. As you saw, I mean, the way to actually exploit it is, I mean, it's fairly configurable. So,
Did you guys test 4?
sorry, what's that?
4, 4.1?
They're not vulnerable. If you go back to the vulnerable,
List, it wasn't on there.
Yeah, it wasn't on there. We tested it. It was actually remediated between update 3 and update 4. So physical layer, somehow it got unplugged. That's fantastic. All right, so it's logging in now, thankfully. So there's my running box, Ubuntu 804S, right? So I'll go down here, I'll do a PWD, you'll see that I'm in users, my name, documents, virtual machine. And what I'll do is I'll do ls-l, and you'll see that I have my ESX box that I tested there, the GuestStealer program, and my VMware log from the ESX box in that directory as well. So what I'll do now is I'll actually just run GuestStealer and type in the IP address that you can see above there in the URL and location bar for Firefox. It's 192.168.111.2. And I will go ahead and do 8222. You can go ahead and do all this stuff with the command line. I just wanted to show how easy it is to use. I mean, it basically just says here, fill in the blank. And it's a server. Oh, sever. Hunt and peck. Okay, so there you go. It pulled down the VM inventory.xml file and said, okay, I only have one server on here, but if there's more, it'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So I want to go ahead and steal 0. And where do I want to put it? You can put a full path in there. I'm going to do just a dot, and that's going to put it in the working directory that I'm currently in. And there it goes. It's stealing the VMX, parsed it, identified the VMDK file, stole the NVRAM, the VMXF file, and now it's stealing the VMDK file. It's roughly 500 megabytes, so I think in the test we got it down, it's like 37 seconds. So this is when Tony was supposed to talk about the future enhancements, but okay, so it's done. So I'll go over to here, into Fusion, which is a fantastic product that I love. Go to open. Oh, here it is. So my Ubuntu box, I'll go ahead and click open. This is fantastically difficult. Hit the play button. I moved it. There it goes. I mean, it's booting, so. I mean, that's really how easy it is.
All right, so what you should do about it. So the most obvious answer is patch. VMware has fixed this vulnerability, so apply the patch, upgrade, so on and so forth. Better yet, and the actually recommended method by VMware. If you go back to the timeline slide, then you might start thinking, well, I couldn't apply a patch for 5 months in between when they're first notified about it and when they actually released a patch. So what do you do if you've got a vulnerable system?
Not to mention that, not to cut you off, but not to mention that I found this in a really stupid, embarrassing way. So somebody else probably knew about this vulnerability before I did.
So in any case, segment. So what you want to do, segment your management interfaces.
This was actually, to cut off Tony again because I'm rude like that, but this was actually VMware's recommended response was to segment the console interface network. So, but it would be my recommendation as well.
Segment systems of different security levels. Don't share physical NICs between different security levels. So again, it's all about the segmentation. It's all about defense in depth. But then just to go on to a virtualization soapbox, it's not always the best answer, right? Do you want to put your most critical systems in a virtualized environment? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But when you do, just understand that there are going to be risks with doing so.
Right. I mean, it basically adds another layer, right? People are, tend to think, okay, software, hardware. Now there's the VMware in the middle, right? So you need to make sure that you address all three layers, if you will. So that's it. Even with the snafu, I guess we still made it within time. Are there any other questions?
Did we miss the CVE number for the vault?
Wow, I didn't include that. It's 2009-3733. I'll go ahead and pull it back up. The question was, did he miss the CVE number? Yeah, here it is. That's right, the play button's here. All right. So, 2009-3733. In the back? They're not vulnerable. They fixed that before. The question was, are ESX4 and vSphere vulnerable? They are not. Okay, so the question was, did I see any stability issues when I was stealing the guest? The question is no, on top of, except for in the case of server, just dealing with the web UI through the browser, I had issues, but when I was using the Perl script, it was responsive all the time. I tested it with files of 500 megabytes, which is what we did here, a gig, 2 gigs, up to 10 gigs, and I didn't have any issues. So it seems to work pretty well. Again, it's a Perl script, so if you find that it doesn't, you can improve it yourself. But if you do, let me know. That'd be kind of cool, so we can update it too for everybody else.
Can you just talk for a second even about the way that they fixed the vulnerability? Because you discussed with the management UI with root, other like kind of things. I mean, did they change that?
So, okay, so the question is kind of more, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, the question was, can you talk a little bit about how they actually fixed the vulnerability? You know, we kind of showed what was vulnerable, but how did they actually fix it? To be honest with you, I don't know everything about how they fixed it, and that was one of my questions to them, because I worked back and forth with VMware, and they were actually really responsive, but they didn't quite answer it. For ESX and ESXi, I believe, they actually fixed this before I let them know about it. In January of 2009, but if you read the details for the update, they don't say that this was an issue. They talk about some other security issues, but they don't say this is an issue. Now, what I think what the problem was this is just actually an Apache Tomcat vulnerability. And so potentially they probably just rolled it out with an updated version of Tomcat when that Tomcat vulnerability went away. I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's my understanding of it. Yeah.
Tell us how you discovered it since you finished it.
Really? Food? Oh, booze, even better. Okay. Yeah, so it's really stupid. So I was just building my Ubuntu box at work, and I used this awesome tool called Nessus, and I scanned my localhost, and it found it. And I was like, no way. But yeah, so it found it. I mean, it kind of takes the mystique out of it. Like, a lot of people think like, oh, he knows something that's really cool, how to find vulnerabilities, and I really just ran Nessus against my local host. And it said, you have a directory traversal vulnerability. And I was like, that's fantastic. Hey, VMware, do you know about this? So, yeah, I guess, yeah, there goes my mystique. Anything else? All right, cool. If there's any other questions, you can find us walking around or at the bar. So, thanks, everyone.
Back up here.